Hey, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good, good, good. I'm just spotlighting you. So you and I are the main
Okay.
the main targets on the screen. Cool. We've got a bunch of people coming in now. Are you ready to go?
Yeah. Oh, I came prepared.
How you feeling?
A little bit nervous. I'm not the best at public speaking, but I
Cool.
will.
I'll make you feel nice and comfy.
Worries.
Cool. I'll admit everyone now and then we'll just let people join in shortly.
Okay.
There'll probably be a few late stranglers, I imagine. So.
Oh, I can let people in. Oh, wait, no, you've done that.
Yeah, cool.
Hello, I am here.
Is it lagging?
Hello all. How are we? I'm
Hi
gonna
there.
mute you all soon, but I'll let you talk for now. Cool. Right, we'll get underway shortly, everyone. I'm just waiting for a few people just joining now, and then we'll get right away. Hopefully you can all see our screens. You can see hopefully myself and Annette nice and prominently. Got some cool. Can you unmute yourself, please?
Did you mute me on accident?
Just you. Yeah.
Okay.
Fabulous. Right. I reckon we'll get underway. We're 3:02, and we've got Annette for a short time, but a good time today. Thanks, Annette, for joining us. So wonderful to have you all on the call. Thank you, everyone that has joined so far. Really excited for today's session, and we've still got some people coming in. So yeah, I'm lucky enough to be joined by Annette Khaw. Have I pronounced your last name there correctly? Annette?
Yeah. Yeah.
Great. So Annette is with etrainu up in Brisbane. etrainu have been working with Chameleon for a couple of years now, and do some really, really awesome work, and I'll let Annette talk about that shortly. But what's your official title, if you will, Annette? And I want to dig into this a bit more shortly around this, but what's your official title?
Graphic designer and e-learning developer.
Yeah, and you started as a graphic designer, though, didn't you? It's is that correct?
Not with etrainu, but like in my career, yeah, as a graphic designer, and then eventually learning experience designer, and then e-learning developer. So they're kind of all the same thing, though.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's something I'm going to dig into a bit shortly. Before we kick off, though, really keen for you to share with everyone on the call today, and I know that there's a number of people that are going to watch this later on because they can't unfortunately make it to this. But can you share a little bit more about etrainu, what you folks do up there, and the two different sort of sides of the business, and also I guess a bunch of some customers you guys work with as well, because you've got a really awesome stable of customers and brands you work with, Australia, but further afield as well.
Yeah, so etrainu is an e-learning provider that has course content tailored for different industries. So, for example, within the care and support sector, we've partnered with the NDS, which is the National Disability Services, to deliver a library of over 100 assets for disability support providers. And for the corporate sector, we have like a cultural awareness library that covers topics like racial sensitivity to Indigenous awareness. We've also worked with a bunch of clients across different sectors like Surf Life Saving Australia, HSBC, Asahi, CUA, which is now Great Southern Bank. Yeah, so it's across a whole different range of different industries and sectors.
Excellent. And can you share, because you're working with a couple of customers in the States now as well, right? You've got a little bit of a presence over there. Can you share who you're working with over there, or some of the brands maybe? I guess there's some official things that are meant to be in play first. Is there anything you can share over there or not yet?
We do work with AYSO, which is a soccer organization in the US as well. Not sure about the other ones.
Yeah, cool. No,
really
we'll keep those under wraps. I don't want to get in trouble with anyone. And can you explain a little bit about the two sort of sides of the business? Obviously, you've got the platform, but also, I guess, more of the studio side of it too. And I guess you're dabbling across both.
Yeah, so mainly my role is course development and design. So I work closely with our instructional designer who writes the course content. And we as a team, we are constantly researching new e-learning technologies. So in the last few years, I have worked with different authoring tools like Storyline, Rise, Nobly, and now, of course, Chameleon. But yeah, so we work really closely with clients in developing course content and making them as engaging as possible for the learners.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And the platform itself, right? It's an evolving library of some really great content you've got in-house, but you're working with external developers as well. Is that right?
Yeah. So like the cultural awareness library is one suite of courses that we've developed in-house. And we've also done, like we mentioned, with the National Disability Services, with the whole Workforce Essentials suite of over 100 assets. So yeah, both in-house and external kind of stuff.
Wicked, great. And I know you're going to share some examples with us soon, but I'm going to do a little bit of a plug here, and you'll see shortly when Annette brings up some examples. But the stuff that Annette and the team, and led by Team Anita, leads the studio side of things up there with etrainu, building some fabulous content. We often look at some of the modules that the team at etrainu are developing, and we sometimes scratch our head and wonder actually how they did that. And the platform, I know you stretch it in some pretty interesting ways at times, Annette. So you teach us a few things about our own platform from time to time too. So really cool. So can you, before we get into the nuts and bolts, so what we're going to talk about soon is, I guess, your take on learning design, some of the pitfalls you see some folks slip into sometimes, and also digging into, I guess, a little around the whole concept of content versus learning design. So content design versus learning design. Before we dig a little bit into that, though, can you sort of share a little around your journey around from a graphic designer early days into more of a morphed being around graphic design and learning design? Because it's an interesting discussion. I was talking with Alicia, who's obviously one of your colleagues recently, and she shared some interesting insights at etrainu, where you're starting to work more with graphic designers and folks who can work more in that learning design space rather than just pure developers.
Yeah. So career-wise, so I started off as a graphic designer, but when I was looking for roles, I actually just stumbled upon like an e-learning designer role, and I wasn't quite sure like what that kind of meant, but I looked at the job description and it was really similar to like a graphic designer's position. So I was like, yeah, why not? Let's try, apply and see, how that goes. So yeah, I kind of stumbled into e-learning design by accident. But I do feel like graphic design plays a big part in learning design, where it's all about the visuals, right? Like you have to make things look nice and appealing for it to be engaging. And some, I guess, common mistakes that people make, I guess, inconsistency in the use of design elements. So for example, if you have different illustration or icon styles throughout the training, not having consistent title font sizes. Another big thing as well, it's making designs really busy. So like if you have a busy image on the background and then you add another image on top of it, it kind of clashes and it breaks like the simplicity, I guess, of it. Another thing as well is color contrast. So ensuring, like, again, your elements on screen don't clash. The colors you can't have like two similar shades of blue, for example, and ensuring that stuff is legible. And at the end of the day, I guess visuals do tell a story. So while you need interesting content, like if it lacks the visual appeal, it wouldn't be engaging for the learner.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm taking from that is you, I guess, beginning your career in graphic design, you feel it's really lend itself to playing really nicely within the learning space and being able to translate a message or an objective and get them to uncover that as a learner.
Yeah, because you do understand, like, for example, like the basic use of white space or how to lay out certain elements on the page, and you kind of take that and translate it across into e-learning. So it's pretty much the same skill set, but just applying it on different authoring tools and platforms. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. It does. I guess a bit of an unprompted question, if you will, but what sort of insights or nuggets can you share for someone who may come from more of the learning design space without necessarily the grounding within the visual design space? Like, are there any sort of resources you could share, or blogs or thought leaders, if you will, that you could point people in the direction of to help them out as well?
Yeah, well, I do think Behance, which is what Gil mentioned last week as well, it's such a good site for designers because it gives you such a big variety of different design styles. And it's a great way to get inspiration. For me, I always look for inspiration on Behance. And before I begin on a piece of work, generally I kind of have like a mood board in mind. So I decide on like the design style, the direction, the colors, and the font, and that kind of helps path your way, I guess, into designing a module. I guess some tips I have for people who are new to learning design is always keep three things in mind when you're designing. So color contrast, font, and visuals. So ensuring your visuals, again, they're not busy and they don't clash. And I feel like if you can nail these three things, then you're pretty sweet.
You're singing, right? Yeah. Have you got any examples you can share that are this is a bit like a cooking show? I did tell Annette earlier that I'd love to see some examples, so hopefully she's brought some along. But is there anything you can share on screen?
For sure. So I designed this course. Let me just share my screen. Where is share screen? This one. Sorry. Am I blind? Can I not see the share screen?
There should be a little share parcel at the top with an arrow.
Is it a share tray?
Yeah.
And then how do I share my browser?
Is that come up?
Hidden behind my MacBook.
Oh, cool.
Okay, I'll share a tab. So we designed this Halloween module. It's kind of a thing that we do at etrainu where there's like a holiday, like Christmas or Easter. We kind of design this like fun module for everyone at work. So this is etrainu's spectacular list of scary things.
Very cool.
So that's the start thing, and then so we just have like I think it was 10 facts that are like scary from Halloween. So we have like a video. This is like flip cards that we've used. So frightening things you encounter in the office, your boss calling, your manager asking you to do one last thing, kind of thing.
Wow. And you've really used those background images here, haven't you, to really to add. So the content itself is not to take away from the content, but some of it's relatively simple. You've kept it nice and consistent, but those backgrounds are really making it sing as well.
Yeah, so it's all about like the visuals kind of being there, but not fighting for the attention of the content.
Yeah.
And then we have that, and also font. Like I know Chameleon has. I guess when we started, you guys had like a certain number of fonts, but now you have like almost a whole library of Google fonts, which is amazing because playing around with like the heading of fonts really creates like a dimension, I guess, to your page. And
There's
then
around 1,400 now, I think.
wow,
Yeah,
that's
it's really increased.
and then that's like fun thing I've learned is these are actually content card slides, but you can save an image as a PNG and remove the card background, so you kind of have that like seamless feel with your click to reviews instead of just a card. Yeah, so that's Halloween module.
Very, very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
And I know you might have some others to show shortly. I think we're going to jump into some branching content soon. I guess what's your take? Or did you have something else you wanted to share now? Or
Oh yeah, well, it's like to do with the branching stuff that you're about to talk about. So I'll let you go.
we'll talk about that soon. Yeah, sure. So talk to me about the difference between what's your take on the difference in content design and learning design? The reason I ask this is we get asked this, a lot, and we come across it a heap in terms of, and I personally, I really think there is a place for content design. Like we're seeing a lot of folks use the platform as a presentation tool, for example, or a replacement for something like PowerPoint, and so it doesn't actually require learner input as such. But what's your take on the difference in the sort of landscape there?
Well, personally, I feel like they're really similar in the sense that both rely heavily on having engaging visuals that bring content to life. But I guess for learning design, it's important that there's some sort of a logical structure that the learners follows so that they stay engaged throughout the training, and then the training achieves its desired outcomes. So that's kind of the difference to me, learning design, content design, is that flow and that structure with e-learning design.
And are you, I guess, coming back to any of those pitfalls, are you seeing, because you're seeing content sometimes that's been brought to you and you're wanting to repurpose it or reshape it or reproduce it? Is that something you come across a lot with some of the customers you work with, like when you're working with them for the first time?
So if we are producing, like if we're working with a client producing content from scratch, it actually goes to the instructional designer first. So then she kind of takes that content and formats it and like lays it out such that there is like a flow to it, and there's like structure to it where they do content and they learn and then they're like tested after with like questions and quizzes and hotspots and stuff like that. So in those kind of instances where we get pure like content, it goes to the instructional designer and then comes to me to make it.
Sure.
Yeah.
To make it sing from the visual side of things. Yeah, because I'm not sure if we can share this in it, but you folks at etrainu, you've got a really cool resource in terms of your approach to learning design when it comes a new project. Is that something we could potentially share with the audience following, or
Which resource?
there's a brochure you've shared with?
Yeah, for sure. So in the studio at etrainu, we do custom course development, and we take you through like a 6-step process where we develop and create courses specific to your organization and its training. And yeah, you can definitely share that resource, that brochure, with people who are interested.
Oh, cool. Okay, cool. If that's a value for anyone, it's there's a nice, I guess it takes you through the process that etrainu works through when they're looking at custom course design. There's also some really awesome value adds there in terms of your process that you work through. That's obviously seamless through that design process from where to go from start to delivery. And I think what I like about it as well was it looks at the process a little bit differently in terms of it's dropped that developer resource out of it largely. And because I guess folks like yourself and the people on the call today can use the platform to do that without that leaning on a developer as well. Excellent. Is there any before we get into a couple more questions from me? Are there any questions that anyone has that you guys want to chuck at Annette, put her in the hot seat and try and test her on a few things? You can either jump in the chat. There's also a Q&A function there as well that you can feel free to type anything into as well. And it's a really good resource for me when I'm trying to learn about learning design and ways that folks are applied it in different sorts of ways. So if you've got anything you want to shoot her way, feel free to either put it in the chat or the Q&A box there. And while we wait for some of those to come in, keen to dig into this branching and choose your own adventure stuff a little bit more. It's one of the most common questions we get, is seeing some examples of how this has been applied really, really well. Can you share one of your favorites potentially and sort of explain to us how you've used that, and I guess the benefit for the learner as well?
Yeah, sure. So I actually have two to show you. One is kind of like a scenario-based learning, and one is like a branching scenario-based learning. So one takes you through like a user journey, and then one kind of you choose your journey and you get kind of feedback based on what you've chosen. And I feel like scenarios and branching scenarios, they work for two reasons, like the story it tells and also the visuals that enhance the story, which kind of creates like an immersive experience for the learner. Yeah, so if you're creating like a scenario or branching scenario, in terms of logic, you would have to first set the scene and then question the user and then create pathways to cater to their responses. So I'll show you one that we did for surf life saving. I know it's one of your favorite ones, Reese.
Yeah, I've seen this a lot. It's the sort of module that I'd love to show many more people, but I know I can't, so I don't. But before you go through this, Annette, so when Surf came to you with, like, what was the learning challenge here, and was it always a goal to create a choose your own adventure module? Like, is that the remit they gave you, or was that something you suggested as a possible path to meet their objective?
I think it's something, well, I'm just saying this, but I think it's something we suggested to them. And I think like when COVID hit, they couldn't do a lot of face-to-face training and workshops. And that's where we kind of thought, well, why don't we actually put them instead of on the beach, like on the beach, but in a module so that they are like literally, going through the same scenario. And it kind of like, I know it's not quite the same, but like that's the closest we could get.
Yeah, exactly. Cool.
Yeah.
So if you can walk through this, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, so this specific scenario is a shark attack, which is, I don't know, is it pretty common in Australian beaches? But so we actually got like custom illustrations done as well to set the scene, which again, I like say visuals do play a big part in like a learner's experience and them absorbing the information. So this is just kind of like the backstory of what happens on the beach, and you kind of introduce like your learners there. Oops, sorry. And then this is where we ask them. So after showing them the scenarios, like, so how would you handle this? What are some of the actions you and your patrol team may need in a response to a shark attack? So we have, in this case, is all of them. And yeah, so it'll be like, good choice, like, yep, you do need all of this, and let's proceed on. And then so first you have to contact our sellers communication center. And if you get it wrong, just try again till you get it right. So that's the correct answer. Sorry. Yeah, and then now it's time to send the team out. So you kind of learn about each team member as you would like when you're on patrol, I guess, at the beach. And then once you've learned about them, that's when you kind of choose how would you select them based on their skills, demographics, and and then you can select that. So that's wrong. And then can't see the button. Okay, that's correct. And then this is also where we use kind of different interaction tools to mix up the learning. So it's not just like multiple choice. Like we have like a drag and drop, to which I don't really know the answer, to be honest. So I'm just going to continue. Then, yeah, so then kind of at the end, so it's like a story, right? You tell a story, you put them in like the experience, and I feel like that's kind of how they learn best.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then the scenario ends by the victim is now revived. You radio someone, and then something's wrong, but then you go for a debrief, and then that's kind of the next section. You kind of talk about debrief, so it kind of blends it really seamlessly as well when you're talking about one topic to the next with scenarios. So yeah, so that's the shark attack scenario that we developed, and I have another one that's it's a more of a branching, I suppose. If I can just share my screen. Oh, can't see. Yeah, so this is a branching scenario where we've set it up such that as a learner, if you select option A, for example, it brings you down the feedback path of option A, and then B, it brings you down path of B. So it's like different, what do you call it? Like different kind of specific feedback for each option. So starting with this scenario, it's about Tracy's concern. So I think this was following the shark attack. So it's kind of like a follow-up to the other scenario, which is a really good thing as well if you kind of link your scenarios throughout the course. So it feels like one, like cohesive kind of training. So with this scenario, a week later, something's different. She seems tired and you think it's time to speak to her. So yeah, so we've used like flip cards here to make it more engaging instead of just having like image or text. So it actually gives like the learner something to click, and the more they click, the more, I guess, engaged they will be. So this is where the branching kind of happens. Like, where would you start this conversation? So you give the learner 3 options, like where would you do it? So for example, if you go buy her car, and then it tells you what happens when you do that, followed by how would you respond? So that. So then she's like, oh, blah, 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 try again, and that, wrong again. Clearly you haven't done this module a lot, and then continue. So that kind of loops you back to here, which shows like, yeah, you didn't get it right, like have another go. And then in the club room, that's another like option that we've gone down. So she's like, yes, frustrated, and then she's talking. How would you respond? She seems angry, and she's like, so it's like a conversation kind of, you like continue the conversation on that. And then, yeah, so it kind of just goes down that branch of.
This is excellent. I haven't seen this one.
Oh, have you?
No, it's great. I really love it. Yeah. The visuals are spot on.
So that's like finish. And if you wanted to go back to like choose the other options, it kind of just, oh wait, did I just do that one? Yeah, so that's the other option, and it goes try again. It's not a good time or place. So yeah, that's an example of a branching scenario that we have.
So I think, sometimes my impression is some folks are, a little nervy to go down this path. Is on the surface it can seem, a little complicated to design something like this. What's your take on that? And any tips, you would suggest when someone is embarking on a path to create a branching module like this? Like, what would you recommend?
Well, first, I guess do a storyboard or kind of or something similar where you know what your end goal is, like what you want to teach them at the end of this branching scenario. And then kind of before you start designing the slides, you just plan out all your content. So you kind of, what we do is we draw out on a whiteboard like the different pathways that a learner can take and what kind of learning comes out of each path. And then once you have all of that, then you can start going in and designing slide by slide. So it's not as scary as it looks. You just kind of design individual slides and then you just link them according to your feedback layer or like your buttons or yeah.
Sure. And I think from what I've seen, and I have looked under the hood of a couple of these modules, is you're quite explicit and careful with how you name your topics and how you rename your interactions so that they are linked really clearly. So when you are linking up that navigation, it's it's easy to apply that rather than getting too confused and going, right, where's this going again? Am I right in sort of saying that?
Yeah, 100%. So when we were doing that surf module, we actually labeled them like pathway A, pathway B, pathway C,
Sure.
just so that when we are developing and designing the course, it makes sense to us what slides to link it to. And then when it goes to the client, then we just change the name to like a proper title for that slide. But as we are testing and designing it, we just label it whatever makes sense to us.
Right. Nice.
Yeah.
And yeah, and the testing process itself, how do you do that? Do you send it off to someone external to the team that's outside of the project to see what they think of it? How do you go down that path? Yeah.
So for example, we've designed this course recently that's about numeracy and literacy. So we sent it to our financial accountant to test it.
Always good. Yeah.
So yeah, the best way to like get, because sometimes when you are in the course too much, you're like, oh well, I know that this goes here, or I know that this button jumps there. So you kind of are going by default. But when you send it to someone else to have a look at it, they kind of look at it with fresh eyes.
With a fresh set of eyes.
Yeah, they might pick up stuff that you've missed because you have been so used to going through the course.
Excellent. I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's been a little, a personal goal of mine to demonstrate and show off a really good module in this sort of space, and personally I really dig it, and I've never seen it, so it's very, very cool. We've got a couple of questions that have been put in the chat here. It looks like there's a question here. Hi, Annette. And I think Tania may have answered this for us on your behalf or our behalf. So thanks, Tania, but we'll just double check it. You talked about 3 things about design, contrast, and 2 other things. Tania suggested that they were font and visuals. Is that on the money on that one? Yeah?
Yeah, spot on.
Cool. Thank you, Tania, and good question. And then we've got another question from Jennifer. It'd be great to see an example of a mood board, and perhaps an example of taking an existing visually challenging module and improving the design.
Oh, wow, that's a great question. I do have an example of a mood board, but I don't have it with me right now. But I can like walk you through what's on the mood board if that helps. So when I do a mood board, first I determine my color scheme, because I think that's the most important to start with. If you are following like a client's brand guidelines, then it's obviously good to stay within their color palette. So first things, I do like a color, like 3 circles or 4 circles, no matter how many colors you're using, put them on the board. And then I do font. So I have like the font, the heading that I'm going to use, and then the text, the body text I'm going to use. And I see kind of how the font how the fonts look like. If I'm using a different font for the heading, how it looks like with the body text.
Right.
Yeah, and then after that, I kind of look for imagery. So if your course is going to be like image heavy, I kind of look for styles or color palettes of like images on iStock or FreePic, that kind of thing. And then I put them all together and see if they kind of look nice and cohesive. And then after that, I play around with like the color combinations. So for example, if you're having a blue background and you want to have like white text box, so you kind of just do that just to see how it will look, because that will be how it looks in Chameleon once you start designing it. And then what else do I have on my mood board? That's pretty much it. It's just like a design direction, like style that you can kind of know what path you're going down before you start designing the whole module.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Hopefully that somewhat answers your question, Jennifer. And if we're lucky enough to have Annette on another call at some stage in the future, I may get you to come and bring one of those along, Annette, to share with everyone. A question from Tania: How long on average do you take to design an e-learning module? And I think I've got a follow-up question to this, so I'll let you I'll let you take a stab. Yeah.
It depends on the size of the module. So generally, modules fall into 3 kind of categories. One is a short module, so it's anywhere from 5 to 10 slides, and then we have medium modules anywhere between like 10 to 18 maybe, and then large modules are like anything above 20 slides. But generally, we try to keep our modules short and sweet and like to the point, because like no matter how nicely designed or engaging your module is, if it's such a long module, someone's going to get tired of clicking through it, or they're going to stop and come back to it at a later time. So we do try to keep it like under 20 minutes of seat time. And to your question, how long do I take to design a module? For short modules, probably 4 to 5 hours. And then medium modules, probably 6 to 8. And anything more than that is like maybe 12 hours.
And so when you say 6 to 8, like as an example for that medium module, is that yourself? Is that the whole team's input into that particular project?
No, so it would just be design purely.
Yeah.
I can't speak on behalf of how long the instructional designer takes to write the content, and I don't want to discredit.
Yeah.
But personally, yeah, it takes about 6 to 8 hours to do like a medium size module, because that includes usually for me designing backgrounds. So if I'm having like icons or illustrations on backgrounds of slides, I kind of do that in Photoshop and Illustrator first, and then I bring it in as an image. Same with icons. And if I'm like editing photos to change their colors, or adding overlays, or changing their shape, those kind of things take up time as well. So that's...
Yeah, I guess Nish has taken a question right out of my mouth as well. Was so your design time, that time you've talked about, does that include the build time? Because I'm assuming you're developing it as well, right? And plumbing it together. Am I right in saying that?
When you say build time, like...
So laying it up, plumbing the interactions together.
Sorry.
Sorry. So are you developing it, Annette, as well? So you're putting all this content and the visuals into Chameleon, or is someone else doing that?
No, so I'm doing it. So usually we have two different kinds of like projects. One where it's design ready, so I literally take content, put it in, and develop it. And the second type is where the instructional designer takes the content and she reformats it and restructures it and puts it in like what we call a wireframe. And then when the wireframe is ready, I just go in and make it look nice. So do all the design stuff, put colors, put fonts, put images and icons and stuff like that.
Right, yeah. So safe to say that time includes, both, either for either path. Okay, neat. And is there anything, this is a selfish question, but is there anything, like, I know your process has evolved and changed quite a lot over the last 2 to 3 years, from what you were used to be using, and in terms of tooling and things, and to where you are now. What's changed the most on that part? And is there anything that's, I guess, made your life easier?
The most? I think working on a cloud-based platform makes it super easy. See, there's no need for like updating software or like downloading, having like files. Because when you work in a team, like having lots of different project files can be quite challenging, because like you can update one version and someone else, whereas like cloud-based platforms like Chameleon makes it so easy to just go in and that you're updating like the latest course. And there's no like which version is always going to be one same version. So that has been super easy. Also mobile responsive. Like I think a lot of people now are moving to more mobile friendly designs, because they're, doing training on the go. So not having to worry about designing it in a separate like mobile instance saves you so much development time.
Yeah. I can imagine that to save heaps of. Oh, cool. That's really, really good insights. Hopefully for everyone. And are there any other questions? I've got a couple more, but I don't want to take up all of your time. I can ask you this anytime. So is there any other questions from anyone else on the call today? While we're waiting for those, I guess one of the last ones I wanted to ask you, Annette, was around learning. So we talked a little bit around learning principles last week, and we often get asked questions around, what are the rules of thumb you follow, if you will, from a learning design principle standpoint? Like, is there anything, obviously we've talked about the visual side of things, but is there anything else that comes to the fore with your work at etrainu?
Well, one thing, we love making everything look nice.
Mm-hmm.
That's really important. Just kind of like knowing the purpose of your training and knowing what you want your end learner to learn, for lack of better words. Having that really nails your training to a T, so you're not, everything's really focused and sharp, and that's the best I can come up with.
No, that's great, because it's important to know from, what's most important to you folks as well. And I think that comes through really strongly with the, I'm just looking at the slide you've got on the screen now, like the difference and the diversity between both of those two interactions, and what you've managed to do with laying those cards up as well is really, really cool. And a follow-up question from Nisha: does the wireframe include creating the interactions? So I think we're just linking back to that last question.
Yep. So it does include interactions. So the instructional designer would, for example, she sees like this content and she thinks, oh, that would be really nice in the accordion, or like that would be as a flip card. So that's where she kind of decides what form of interaction to put it in. But sometimes if I feel like while designing it, if there is a better way of presenting the information, like I would just have a chat with her and kind of see if we can change it just from a design point of view, especially if there are like too much text on the screen. Then we kind of want to break it up and maybe split it into a different interaction or have it over 2 slides.
Excellent. And I'm going to let you go in a minute because I know you've got a few important meetings you need to get into shortly, and you've been so wonderful with your time. So thanks so much for taking some really valuable time out of your day, and thank you, Anita, by the way, as well. Not to share, I guess, too many tricks of the trade that make your world easier, but I am going to ask you for some. What have you picked up in your time with Chameleon in terms of hints and tips, shortcuts, anything from a design perspective that's made your life a little bit easier and a little bit faster?
One thing that comes to mind straight away is that having that preview on the right that was recently introduced, where you don't have to preview the whole module, you just preview like your specific slide. So that's really useful, and that's saved us so much time. Also having that gradient background, option to do gradient colors, I think that's really cool as well. It's saved us a lot of time from having to do it like in Photoshop or Illustrator and then bring it in as an image. You can kind of just play around with it. So that's been really handy as well. Nothing really else comes to mind at this moment, even though there's heaps of like ways to get around stuff, I guess.
Yeah, and I guess that's what I was saying earlier with the different ways that Annette and the team at etrainu have stretched the platform in different directions is really, really cool. The way that you and the team there have used the embed, for example, and embedding different types of media and things into modules and making it seem like they've been built within the platform as well, I think is really, really neat. And obviously what you're doing with the visual side of things is excellent too. Right, I'm gonna let everyone go in a moment, unless there's any follow-up questions. On the back of this, we're going to send out some of these resources we've been talking about from Annette and the design process that she likes to work through. So hopefully that will be super valuable. Quick update on the platform side of things. One thing, I've seen some really exciting work being taken place, and I think this will be good news for a lot of people, is our review tool. So I've seen some work on that front in the staging environment and in the testing piece as well from the product team, and it's looking really great. Really excited to get that out into the platform. I don't have a due date yet, a drop dead date, but it's looking really, really great, and I think that's going to add to our efficiencies in how we're producing and designing content. No, that'd be good for you, Annette. I know you're doing a few workarounds in that space. So yeah, I just want to say a huge thank you from myself and everyone on the call today. Thanks for giving up, a really good chunk of your time and sharing with some really valuable nuggets, with everyone on the call. If you've got any questions for Annette, please, you can either get in touch with me or what's your email, Annette? Do you want to share that with everyone? I can share it following as well.
Yeah, you can share it. It's probably hard to spell, but
yeah, okay. I'll send that out afterwards. And I guess if anyone out there has, I guess, been a little bit interested or intrigued with some of the work with that Annette and the team at etrainu are doing, feel free to reach out to them as well. I'm a big fan of what they're doing in the space, and yeah, I'm slightly biased, but it is very, very cool, and I think you've all seen the result of that on the screen today. So thanks for sharing those examples too.
I have a question for you, Reese.
Oh, go. Yeah, this is awkward.
When can we expect more interaction types?
Sorry?
When can we expect more interaction types?
Very shortly. There's a few that we're working on under wraps. One in particular around, I guess it's a binning or categorization interaction, if you will. So being presented with a thing, it might be a banana, and you drag it into a bin. Is this a fruit or a vegetable type scenario? We're also looking at expanding the options within our assessment platform as well. So the assessment side of the tools are adding some different options in there. I know the team have been discussing the possibility of putting things like visual assets into our multi-choice questions as well. So I think that's going to be really, really neat. We have been exploring the possibility of having the flip cards as a scoreable interaction as well. There's some slight complications with that one. We've obviously done that recently with the hotspot interaction, for example. So we're just trying to plumb that together. But it's a bit of a live discussion at the moment. So yeah, good question. Is that from Anita, or is it? I can see Anita Anita's a studio manager at etrainu. I can see her on the call, and that's a cheeky little. Kelly, good question. The name of the design company, so it's etrainu.com. Is that it's just .com, isn't it? Yes, etrainu, E for e-learning, and then train, and then U as in just the letter U, .com. And I'll there we go. Thanks, Tom. Fabulous. I didn't need to go through that 5 times in terms of the spelling, but look in the chat there. We'll send that out via email as a follow-up. But thank you so much for everyone taking a good chunk of your afternoon out too, or midday. Look forward to next week. Confirming it shortly, but I believe Tom, do you want to? Are we going with Chris next week? Is that correct? Tom there to say yes.
I'll have to just double check. I think Chris is the following week.
So we might have Lizzie.
Yes, I will. I'll have to open up our schedule, but I'll drop it in the email to everyone so you can all see what's coming up.
Yeah, I'll let you know on the scope, but I believe we've got Lizzie coming along, and Lizzie is a bit of a master storyteller. So we're going to talk about storytelling next week. So I'm really, really pumped about that as well. She's doing some fab work in that space. So watch this space, yet to be confirmed, but I'm pretty sure that's happening. So look forward to chatting with you next Tuesday. Have a fabulous afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us. Any questions, reach out to us, Reese at chameleoncreator.com, and we'll talk again soon. Thanks all.
Yeah.
Thanks, Annette.